I'll talk here for a little bit, and Kieran, Exhibit A, Kieran O'Shea. Exhibit B, John B. Exhibit Y, McCarthy Shaw. And so on down the roster. We'll have different speakers. We'll have Nora Relevant if you'll be here. We'll have singers and so forth and so on. Now, I wonder, there's one word I'd like to have banned. Without further ado. The next man I hear saying without further ado, I'll throw a tomato at him. So here, I'd like to call upon Michael Kennelly and Michael O'Connor are the organisers of this little tour, this informal tour. And we hope if we make a mistake that we'll be forgiven by our own people and that they won't take us to task about it. Now, we have a singer here too, Joan Mulville, who'll sing one of John B's songs and one of my songs because we believe in promoting Irish manufacture. Hello, that's Paddy O'Donnell. He's the man who wrote about the faction fighters and so forth and so on. All right, now who's speaking first? Kieran O'Shea will give you the background. Nora Relhead is upon us now. So Kieran O'Shea. Watch the mic, Kieran. It's a big picture.
All right, fine. I better duck so without further ado. I just see Can you hear me without it?
Yeah.
No. I'm supposed to speak principally about, we say, the castle and a few places around like that. In the early part of the 19th century, it was one of the periods when people began to travel, perhaps because of better roads and later on the trains. And everybody that travelled wrote a book. This seemed to be the thing at the time. Many of these people came to Ireland, some of them came to Kerry. And amongst those that came were, I just mentioned a few, Mr. and Mrs. Hall, the Reverend James Hall, Isaac Wells. These also visited the Stone, but I think they kept going. They didn't stay overnight. But one particular man did, and that was Thackeray. William Makepeace Thackeray wrote a number of books. And this is his description of the Stone in 1842. Coming from Tralee, he said, the town itself, is seen from a little distance, lies very prettily on a river, which is crossed by a handsome bridge, which leads to a neat-looking square, or the square we are, which contains a smartish church, as Church of Ireland, which is flanked by a big Roman Catholic chapel, which is over there. An old castle, grey and ivy-covered, stands nearby. It was one of the last strongholds of the Lord of Kerry. But pretty as the Stone is from a distance, it has, on a more intimate acquaintance, by no means the prosperous appearance which a first glance gives it. The place seems like a scene at a country theatre, once smartly painted by the artist, but the paint has cracked in many places, and the lines are worn away, and the whole piece only looks more shabby for the flaunting strokes of the brush which remain. A great Jeremy Diddler kind of hotel, you know, stood hard by, swaggering and out at elbows, and then 6 pretty girls were smiling out of a beggarly straw bonnet shop, dressed as smartly as any gentleman's daughter of good estate. Anyway, he spoke, as did most travellers in the early part of the 19th century, of the bridge below, the neat church which is here, the Catholic church which is in the corner, and the castle which is around. Not that you can't see it. hotel which is below him. Now just very briefly a few words about each of these. The castle, well, Listowel Castle, if you come to the meaning of the word what does Listowel mean, some call it Listowel. In 1302 there is a list of places, an ecclesiastical document, and it's called Lismokel. Some would say that means Lismokel at the fort in the middle of the woody plain. You can take whatever meaning you wish. I can't give you any definite. But anyway, the castle which is below there, which you have to obviously see it later on, it's a 15th century building. Archaeologists tell us that it is much like Bunratty Castle. And it's possible, sometimes it's attributed to a man, a builder called McKelligot. Thackeray mentions it as a stronghold of the Lord Kerry. Obviously, Thackeray didn't hold the entire truth at that particular time. It was built, we think, in the 18th century. It has been associated with the McKelligot family for many years. 1854, Gerald McKelligot married a lady called Elizabeth Adams, then owner of the hotel. And it remained in the McKelligot family until it was sold in 1960 to a man called Joseph Locke in Belfast. In September 1891, Parnell came to the store and addressed the people from a window in the hotel. And it was one of his last appearances before he died. Here he uttered words which quite probably he uttered elsewhere as well, which have become
the last duel to have been fought in North Kerry was fought between a man by the name of James or Jimmy the Buck Raymond and an unknown opponent. They were duly seconded. I think the year was 1867. They were seconded, they cocked their pistols, they walked the requisite paces, they turned and they fired. And the bullets from Jimmy the Buck Raymond's gun landed on the spire of the Protestant church. And his opponent split out a slate one of the buildings here. But my earliest memories of this square on the great 28th of October and 13th of May cattle fair, when Brian used to leave us off to school. I remember well, this place was chocked off with cattle of all kinds. And I can recall now the swearing of the doors, the flopping of innumerable cows, the braying of donkeys, the barking of dogs, and I can remember long-faced, black-coated, mountain farmers with caps on the side of their heads, with the traditional ash plant in one hand and one of the ancient ones in the other. But as I say, the place was literally marked out from corner to corner, way up William Street and up to the top of Church Street, the ultimate town boundary, Ballygallow Cross, about which place I will now render for you at no additional cost one verse of a song about the notorious Ballygallow Brigade, a unit in the Kerry militia, and as fine a body of men as ever marched down Church Street to Mass here at St. Mary's on a Sunday. And here's the verse. In all my life a soldier I was never but once in the Kerry militia barracks under Corporal Dimley once. He said, "You little soldier," and he tapped me on the pole, saying, "I'll have your name, your leg is lame." Knocked off at a Munster road. Then after hospital I was sent and on a hammock laid, because I couldn't keep up the step with the Ballygallow Brigade.
Now we'll have could I leave just before I introduce Michael O'Connor, could I pay tribute to three priests through Saga who have done so much to preserve what we have here. We don't claim to have more than any other town, but we have better PROs. We're able to put what we have in the forefront. One of them is Father Kieran O'Shea, who's editor of the Kerry Archaeological Journal. Another man is Father Tony Gohan, who has written a great monumental work on Listowel. And the other one is out there with his arms folded, is an Mihal O'Gistein of Valentirte. Those three have done a great job to preserve what we have. Now, in the intervals of this, could I introduce to you Michael O'Connor. This is a great name in this locality, O'Connor. Mihal O'Connor, who is from the War, right? Is that right? This is only fitting in a continuation of the lecture given on the Fitzmaurice family, that I should continue it and say a few words about George Fitzmaurice, Ireland's, at least one of Ireland's most famous playwrights. George, I'll first run down through his history. He was born about 2 miles in the northern side of Listowel in Bedford. His father was a Protestant minister and his mother was a Catholic. Now, the marriage was frowned upon owing to the mother being a Catholic and of the working class. George Senior, the minister, was 39 when he got married, and his wife was only 19. They had 12 children, and young George, who became the playwright, was the 12th, no, excuse me, he was the 7th child. All of the children who remained alive, some of them died young, many of them did not get married. He was the last surviving member of the family. Now, he worked, he was educated into our national school. He went and moved to door into a farm which was leased from his sister, who was married to Ronald Bateman. The ancestral home in Goa was about 1.5 miles away from that. He was appointed to our school, and after that, his father gave him his final education. Ballad makers and the best ballad singers in these islands are in America. And here we have the one and only Nora Rilla, and she will speak at a certain part of the town. And here we have a singer, Joan, who says she has a sore throat. Oh, all right, come to me, will come a minute. I'd like to say a couple of words. As we stand here in the square, I'd like to run over some 5 minutes or so. 150 years ago, the following names of Anglo origin were in this square: Shaw and Duffield, Stokes, Church, Denny, Gabriel Pop, he's well known, Morris Leonard, Adams, of course, whose hotel passed to the McKelligans, George Sands. Local people will understand what that means. Captain Shepherd, Colopy's Corner, the Constabulary, various auxiliary workhouses, McChrystal Doctor, and various smiths. So times have changed. I know I'm from there. Where I stand here, let me start here. This house was occupied once by one of the most famous families that ever came out of the stone. It's now occupied by the McKelligans. Ellen is there, Gerald went shyly in, but they are inseparable from the town. Certain names can't be divorced from Listowel. O'Connor, of course, Stack. Stack is very prominent here. Every stack in the world, even the stacks I see out there, we have stacks and stacks and stacks of stacks. Listowel. And we have McKelligans, and of course, John O'Connor. You couldn't trace a John O'Connor in North Kerry. But this house was occupied by the O'Reillys. And these were the most famous family. One of them died in 1960. 16 in Dublin. They came from Ballylongford originally, and Yeats had a lovely poem about O'Rahilly. He called himself the O'Rahilly, but he had no claim to it at all. He had no claim to it. But Yeats said when he died in Moore Street in the famous Bain Charge, he said, "Sing of the O'Rahilly. Do not deny him the right. Sing of the thing before him, allow that he despite all those learned historians who lost it all for good. He wrote out the word himself, he christened himself in his blood." And then he finished up with that. But the O'Rahillys were here. They were in charge of the post office. And a little picture that comes down to me from my mother is they had to call out the dog licenses. And Mrs. O'Rahilly had some of the dog licenses, and Mr. O'Rahilly had the other one of the dog licenses. But they spent some days saying, "Dog or bitch, my love, bitch, my love. Dog or bitch, my love, dog, my love." And this got to be a cant around Listowel. Here are the Maguires, the very old family in the town. They're here yet. That's the bank. Next was Carroll's, which was Bannatyne's. Next was the chemist shop, which is Lean's. And I see one of the Lean's in the outskirts of the town. And these were people who were supplanted from Ballyhaig by the famous Cantillons. And the Cantillons were again succeeded by the Crosbys. And the Crosbys were an Irish family. They were McCrossons. And they were rhymers to the O'Moores of Leaks. And they came down here with the 6 tribes of Leaks. They came down here with the Lawlers, the Moores, the Dorans, the Dowlings, the Southing, and the McAvoys. And I see the descendants of these people, or half them, in the place around. One of them, believe it or not, was Thomas Moore, and one of them also was Fitton Law. So this is very good. Leahy's Corner, very well known in the town. Leahy's are here, half Dowlings. Next was the house of Tim Danaher, now in Radio Area, from Tate. Above that was Latchfords. Latchfords are Palatines. And that brings up the Blenner Hassett and all that. Above that were elders. They were from Virginia in Cabot. Above that was Dr. Dennehy's, famous in Singapore and horse racing service. Then the Bank of Ireland. Above that was Marshall and Macaulay. One of the families of the Marshall was Bishop of Salford. That's Vincent. And they made a joke that they were under martial law. Then above that was a famous doctor called Dr. Clancy. Then the Bank of National Bank above. Then Miss Stagg. Then the Buckleys. Then the Glaziers. Then Colopy's Corner. Then we come to Galvin's, and where the parish clerk is the Protestant school. I'd like sometimes to talk to you about the priests of Listowel. Some of them had a great gift. One of them was Canon Davis, and he would stand up on Sunday and say with his beard, "Jericho is 10 miles from Jerusalem. But sure, I'm talking to people who don't know where's Jericho and where is Jerusalem. And here I am Sunday after Sunday, cutting up the gospel like Kosovan for pigs." And then we had a famous man here called Father Daddy O'Sullivan, who would sacrifice you on the altar of a scathing phrase. One of his phrases was, which I never forgot, he used to abhor people who were down on one knee at the door of the church. And he always looked down at them and he said, "Look at them below, ecclesiastical fowlers taking aim at Almighty God." And I was the altar boy, and some countryman said to me, "Tell Father Danny to give a good look at the second shepherd in the crib." And I said to Father Danny very innocently, "Father, there's a man said you were to look at the second shepherd in the crib. And he said, second shepherd in the crib. And he went out and we found he was on one knee. An ecclesiastical power to his name and Almighty God. All right. Now that's roughly the story of the square. We'll go on now in a few minutes. We'll have a lot of tribulations and trials here today. I'm glad to see the manager of the banks here because they were good friends of ours. All right, anyone heckling? John would be one. And this is the Galvin household. Nora, one of what we call the old stock, like Major Wilbert is standing in the door. And present the pub is run by Monty or Nelly. And this is one of the most being photographed places in the country. Now, it was erected by a Pat McMahon, who lived here over 100 years ago. He died in 1921, and I remember him distinctly. He worked from prime sources and put these things over the door. Hello, will you come this way, please? Get it out the road. But nevertheless, as time went on, we grew to love this, and if anybody touched it, we have said a word of criticism. We get very, very wrong. And I have to keep a guard of the name because the town is full of all. Now the old people don't pronounce it Olaf, they pronounce it MacOlaf. Son of Olaf, which is a Danish name like Sedgwick, which is Citric, and these names like that which come on, but it's very important to note that they called it MacOlaf. This is the signature tune of our town, and we are very thankful to Pat McCullough. We'll see his work as we go along, and his descendants are here still after perhaps 120 or 130 years, and they are here as strong as ever. One of them, Tommy, a good friend of mine, called Nelson, he was over knocking down an angel, which his grandfather had erected in Abbeyfield, and as he was striking with the hammer, he said, my grandfather got £7 for putting up this angel, and I'm getting 14 for knocking them down. Well, it goes like that. You'll find flamingos, parrots, you'll find right from the town, to America. Are you all here? Do you hear me? Yes. Now, this is the entrance of the market, where I spent my whole life. My grandfather was way up here in the market, and I often couldn't control of this place. There's thousands of people in the old days when they were sold everything from Firkins to Fry. And White South, which the McCarthy's and these ones brought in there from the west. But I want to tell you, I'm going to say a little thing for you, a little sonnet for you, which is important. There's a great character came in here from Connor, other side of the hill, called Bob Boland. Now, they were huge farmers, they were legal people, and his brother swore in the Lord Mayor of London. They were in the inner temple in London, they were very, very pretty. And Bob was a country poet, a country rhymer, and I Englishly put him up to a little bit of revelation stuff, and I gave him a subject every week. 1 minute it was sonnet to a spud, sonnet to a cow dung, sonnet to a chamber pot. And he used to go home when I gave the subject, and he'd put his certain bedroom utensil on the chair, and he'd walk all around it, and his good wife would say, so you were in at McMahon? And once I gave him to a sonnet to a hemorrhoid, and he began with, oh, vile expressions that my son gave. And that night, Laura has the one to spud, and I'll try and give her the one to Laura, please. Hello, Laura. Here's the mic. Give it a big now. All right, how do?
A sonnet to an old sonnet. This is the countdown here. Today, just from a friend, that first I heard you had a beauty and a homely grace. Oh, Cloudon, playground of every passing bird that seeks refreshment, or that likes to trace a claw-print pattern on your soft, dark face. You have a rich potential, Isidore, for grass and tillage fields. Shall I construe that some bucolic poet of great Rome's ancient day, mused as I do, If Pastor walked along the Appian Way, yet murmured not, but spoke nice words to you. Cow dung, all nature greets you with a smile. Your blending essence made our emerald eye.
Thanks for very much indeed. I was the friend who knew there was beauty in a powder. And I also found the beauty in that certain bedroom utensil. Love, mother of convention, solid machine report. Love, mother of convention, oldest time shrine of our nightly pilgrimage here sleep. Our morning metaphor and act sublime, often have I pondered full and deep on thee, pale, immobile bedroom jeep. Chamber of commerce of the waterline that has been found in King Tut's ancient tomb. This royal monarch also had his leek not dare to damp his own sepulchral room. The Chaldeans knew the air, they knew the moon. Beloved found for human hemispheres, brewed thinly with her kiss and with her tears. Forward, forward. That's the Sixpence Halfpenny shop. We were started by the Hannons, a very friendly family. I found their footsteps out in Iowa, the Hannons of Listowel, and do this now. John will relieve me from it in God's name.
I will, Brian.
I'm not so acquainted with this traffic in the path of the town, but I think we'll read what William says. That you want to go into the market. Stone makes this bread and butter out of the cow dung referred to earlier. Well, there's muck, there's money, they used to say. And now we have a special treat in store for us. Joan Mulville will sing for you Bryan McMahon's lovely song, My Silver River Field. Joan.
My heart tonight is longing for my sire land, though many miles of ocean lie between. My heart tonight is home again in Ireland,
Joan just a minute or two to catch her breath. Let me tell you one story about the house behind us here, McKenna's. The name McKenna is not a Kerry name at all, although they have variants of it, but it has a very interesting story. Those who know the boys of Wexford, up steps the captain's daughter, the captain of the Yos, saying, "Brave united Irishmen will ne'er again be foes." Now the captain's daughter of the Yos, who ran away with a man called Thomas McKenna. And he was a United Irishman in County Monaghan. Anybody here from the north of Ireland should read a book by Padre Livingston called The Monaghan Story. And the McKennas were pretty rebellious, and one of them fled as a United Irishman to Wexford, and there he took up with the captain's daughter. And when the Battle of Vinegar Hill was over, and when the place stank to high heaven with the carrying of corpses and sheep and cattle that had been slaughtered, and Father Murphy had been burned on the rack, McKenna and his wife came here to this part of Ireland. And from these are descended the McKenna family. And the captain's daughter, Jane Fuchs, F-F-O-U-L-K-E-S, is buried 6 miles outside of the town at a place called Kilsynon. And from these 2 are descended 3 or 4 of the finest families of North Kerry who have given church and state so many things. The Hegartys and the Troys of Church Street. There were 5 priests of them, and that's the story of the boys of Wexford. Now to come home to one of John B.'s songs sung by our own friend again, Joan Mullen. Kilty, she's going to sing. Kilty.
Kilty is a song from my play Many Women of 20. But before she sings it, I'm reminded there of the story we mentioned down the square about Blackfoots again, and the farmers wearing the hempen coats around their coats and fair days. It's just a little epitaph about a sheep stealer by the name of Kemp. Here lie the bones of Thomas Kemp, who lived by wool, who died by hemp. And now I'll hand you over to Joan, who will sing for you this song, Keelty, which is about a part of the river field just down here outside the store. Joan.
Oh, my lost one, soon the roses must die, and soon the wild dove will fly far down the sky. Oh, my lost one, do not leave me to die, for the strength and love of you down here in Kilty. I'll be waiting for you where the cockerel cries, down here in Kilty where the heart in me sighs. I'll be waiting for you where the heart in me dies, for the strength and love of you down here in Kilty. I'll be waiting for you where the small waters flow, down here in Kilty where the white thorns grow. The white fires of joy in your bosom will glow when you see your fine young son down here in Kilty. Oh, my love, my lost one, soon the roses must die, and soon the wild dove will fly far down the sky. Oh, my lost one, do not leave me to die, for the strength and love of you down here in Kilty.
Now we're going going up here. We've 2 stops more to do. We'll have you finished at 5 to 3 and 5 to 4, sorry. And we're just up.
In Listowel, the 13th of May was the biggest fair in Listowel. Fair day has changed a lot since I was a child. My memories of the fair day in Listowel was like a trip to Beauty's home in Killarney, where they are from school. Jobbers from all over the 32 counties would arrive in force, in horseback, by giga and train. When the farmers would arrive, their cattle were sorted, their wheat spread for the market, where you could buy anything from a bucket from a silk scarf. Now, the farmers would buy all the necessary regals for the servant boys. The coats 2 and 6, trousers 2 shillings, hobnail boots 5 shillings, gaiters 3 and 6, the flannel striped shirts for only half a crown. The market was owned in by Lord Listowel. People of all nationalities came to trade their goods the fair day. We had the timber riggers such as the 3-car trick man, the fortune teller, the quack doctor who called himself Dr. Q, who used to make his own bottle of medicine with herbs. I well remember a tall man wearing a black hat standing on top of a wooden box. He would shout from the top of his voice, "Come here," he said, "and I would cure any disease you have. I guarantee to put your wife and the family away, and the bottle will only cost you 2 shillings." I distinctly remember a small fat man making a dash for Dr. Cure, and his wife went dressed in a shawl, showing one eye. Taking the bottle, and the husband said, "Take a drop of that, Mary. We might have a pair of twins." It's well I remember my father, God rest his soul, after selling his cattle and drinking his fair share of water with honey cane and my Gleedolans in Market Street. My father bought me a peppermint kit from a Reggie man. He wore a turban, and he reminded me of nothing but a goat when I come from them. The bidding for the monkey lasted about a half an hour. He was bought for 5 shillings. Hanamaziel, off from there, and that night, when we arrived home with my father, with the Iridian monkey from underneath his coat, the cat and the dog started to scream, "Oh, could hear him down in Tailhead in his Now, this is the Listowel I do. As I strolled down Market Street, the sun shone bright. On the 13th of May, the fair was at its height. The farmers and the tanglers, the giddy hunter of the day, the jobbers were bargaining happy and gay. The air was fresh, the streets were dry. I met my father and his spirits were high. He said, "Come to Tailhead for Maggie Mays and beef pie. Then I will buy you a monkey, the apple of your eye." I felt so happy that tears fell from my eyes. As a child, a monkey was a big surprise. No more I'll roam around the sweetest door, and through the market where I used to roam. No more I'll hear the horses neigh. I'll see the farmers with their loads of hay, and watch the women with their red plaid shawls bargain for shoes at that market walk.
These girls are practicing for the flag joining. I just want to say 2 words before I hand over to Nora over here in the hall. This is where Michael Kennedy has. Michael Penny? No? I can't go. All right. Michael Kennedy lives here. His father had the first motor car in Listowel, and a very, very unusual man. And because of what we were seeing here today, I solved the riddle which has been puzzling me for the last 50 or 60 years. I said to Michael on the telephone today, "Michael, there was a rumor when I was a boy that your father supported and kept alive a monastery in Bavaria. Please tell me about it." And he did. He told me it was true, and his father gave 2,000 to a monastery in Bavaria, completely anonymously, 60, 70 years ago. Only for that it would have perished. So I got it out this morning, and I found out what it was. And the priest came here to thank him for it. He also, he was a poet, but he was very shy about his poetry, and he was writing me letters. He had a great number of tailors here. He was a master tailor, and he'd write me letters but say, "Don't tell me this when you speak to me. You can write it all right," and I'd have a big chat with him. Another thing about the Kennedys, which is not quite known, is that they are descended through some line of the Standish O'Grady's, and his uncle was Standish Helens and Glura, and they came from Glura. Now, those who know the literary history of Ireland can say much of the physical force ideal and much of the literary ideal comes out of Standish O'Grady. Those who know the poetry of Yeats will see
Yeats is a lovely poem saying about beautiful, imperishable things. And one of the things that he said was, Standish O'Grady standing a little bit drunk with 2 tables, speaking marvellous words. One more mention. A couple of doors up here lived a very old friend of my mother's called Katty Buckley. I'm talking about 60 years ago. And when she'd come home, my mother had great talk about Katty's White House. And I asked, why was she called Katty White House? And she said, because she's a cook in the White House. And I said, a cook in the White House in Washington? Yes, she's a cook in the White House in Washington. So I was about 8 or 9 at the time, so I listened very carefully to what my mother and a friend had to say. And Katty Buckley, all the Buckleys came home for Writers Week. They were there for the last couple of days. Boss, they never saw the place before, and I told them this story. So she was saying, Joe, I know when there's a crisis in American affairs. How do you know? My mother said, because the sandwiches come down from upstairs uneaten. So I think she saw American history through eyes that were glazed with gastronomy. Another thing about her, she said, my mother one time, she said, Joe, she said, you know we got a Republican president, and I'm a Democrat. And she said, when we were lined up in the White House in Washington to be introduced to President Hoover, who was a Republican, when he came to me, I stepped forward and said, excuse me, Mr. President, I never voted for you, nor for your party, and I never will. And what did he say? He said, Madam, that is your privilege.
And this play was called The Visiting House. And my la-di-da accent disappeared, and my poor mother nearly had a fit when she heard me saying lines like this around the house. Would you want a clean shirt every week? Because there's some lads going, you know, and you have to knock them down and strip them before they surrender their shirts for you to wash. And she said, my God, you come with one accent, you're here 2 weeks, and here you're back worse than ever. So, when I arrived also, it was well and truly post-war in this country, and you remember the euphemistic term, the really high-burning euphemism for a world war, which we had in this country. It was called the emergency, which I could never understand. And having lived in post-war London, and having seen the result of the Blitz and all the rest, and the result of the war and the people over there, coming back here to what I regarded as a smug, slightly moribund, actually, society, in a sense, and arriving into what I would describe as the tea set, the afternoon tea set. And the afternoon tea set was really promulgated by the banks, because at that time, with respect to our sponsors who were sponsoring this tour, AIB, at that time there were 3 banks in Listowel. I think it was the Bank of Ireland, the National Bank, and the Provincial Bank. Is that right? And after that they all amalgamated. But the ladies decided each afternoon, as far as I can remember, and Michael might remember this too, that they would have a little afternoon tea. And having arrived from London, as I say, from post-war Britain, where afternoon tea had been replaced by cups of tea in canteens, it was a slight shock. And one certainly felt that society had stayed put. But things moved on fairly quickly, and I think that perhaps drama in Listowel was the thing, and the literary scene around Listowel was the thing which kept a lot of us, I think, sane probably at the time, and drove us slightly insane as well. I can remember there are halls up there at the top of the town. There's a Church of Ireland hall, which is now a carpent's store on the right-hand side of the top. And it was a place where we rehearsed plays for many years. And it reminded me of a little church where I used to go in London, near London Bridge, in Amelia Street. It was a post-Reformation church. And this always reminded me of it because it was like a post-Reformation hall. You never knew it was a church hall. There's just a door and you went in. And I suppose I could say it was my hope for a lot of my time here until recently, since it's been taken over to make people's homes more comfortable.
Yes, Willie Harvey from Athene. Willie always referred to Athene as we Athenians. He's an old friend of mine and a man who loves literature, and I'm glad to see him here. Now this is the house of Jimmy Hickey. He's a dancing master, and he traces it. You were taught by Liam Deneen. Liam Deneen was taught by the great Jerry Mulno. Jerry Mulner was taught by Neddy Fat. He was taught by Maureen. Maureen was taught by O'Keefe. So he can trace his Celtic-Victorian ancestry for 200 long, beautiful years. Now, Jimmy Keane, there's Chantal. Please forward to the seat.
Back now.
He runs dancing schools all over North Kerry. Shall I give you this in a minute? I'm going to finish it up. Right, okay. Timmy Frosnahoin here on accordion. Ora Sabrani, she had a lovely. And then Colm O'Brien, come up here, Colm. And listen and look at the dancing of North Kerry. This is a platform. They carry these at the race. They're playing outside many houses. You can see by what we've done today, we're very shaggy. The sports of Listowel. Okay? Kids. Yes. Children, get out of the horse. Show your legs to the country, man.
Step it out, man. They have room.
What are you doing, Kevin? All right.
over the school's inspector, who accused him of having a smell of whiskey off his breath. And they had a long argument, and when Paddy came back into the classroom and he said, I bagged the scoundrel and beat an ignominious retreat to the native valleys of his own obscurity. Sounds gone again. Sounds gone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the highlight of the afternoon is a meeting with Pedro Wilson. Come out here, the beard. Here she is, ladies and gentlemen, sister of Dr. Seamus Spillman, founder of Writers Week, distinguished novelist, academic, but there's no one like the beard.
Here, here.
And totally misled, I think that nobody will deny that Beard Joe is everybody's sweetheart. And everyone, and I'd like to let this okay, not to let this okay, pass it out saying, the higher the girl and the deeper the girl which we hold, which we always have. And I will now ask you to give 3 cheers for Beard Joe with me. Goodbye, Beard, we'll see you again.
Dave, no said.
This is like the house that Professor Paddy Reid came out with, the man who wielded those resources. And over here, on my left, yellow house is the rest of the Queen family, very old, restored family with big national connection. And I remember here there was an old cinema run by a man called Mark Cooney. And it was tough to go in. Mark Cooney, apart from being the proprietor of this little cinema, was also a small time tackle jumper. But one evening, he was to play one of the most significant roles ever played by any cowboy star. When, at the bottom of Church Street, after a natural case to the Brooklyn Farmers, Mark Cooney came up Church Street and broke 5 windows with an axe cut. And they were on the street. But now we're nearly the end of all that. But we go on down now before we come to dance for our stop. I just say a few words down here about William McCall's famous partners. And Brian did with Tom Cruise, the trustee action, and he did a few words about Danny Sinattra's famous bookshop. After that, John McCarthy will render for us one of his better songs below the town square, and that will be the end of the proceedings. By the way, the North of Ireland are leading 4-0 in the World Cup. I'm only joking. I'm only joking. And this used to be the old prize field here to my right. The old property of DSP. And here on my left is Joe Hickey, arch schemer and colleague of Bryan McMahon. Nobody knows the thousands of fans these two fellas have patched together. Whatever he did, he patched has always been for the enrichment of the store. And they have persevered, the two of them, and they have a beautiful night of chat and they join in conversation. Almost impossible to follow at times, but well worth listening to if you have the patience to do so. Joe, God bless you and spare you. And Joe.
Jimmy's father.
Oh, Jimmy Hickey's father.
He's one of the great personalities of this town. The only thing we put him on television to keep him from blaspheming. Because he's a born blasphemer.
And of course, you know how he picked it up. You know how he picked it up.
After all that.
Hanging here outside the door and on the other side of the door. And then we what does it mean?
Print left there.
And Jeff would be there at the door and he'd come out and say, when you all know, he said, what Aim Gubra means. They've been Ireland forever. My son Neville, he said, means, and Mason, the village, they put me up here. And the next thing was, Base Meo in Deo, which means to Jack, go over to Jack's stacks and buy them.
It may not be speaking zone. You come here and see the ticket behind you. Now you see they also have the marbles and they do a lot of skipping. So now, would anybody like to have a little go at the picnic? Are you? Do you have a go at the picnic? Right. Right.
And I didn't teach him everything, and he said he had a very checker every year. He, oh boy, there's nothing that Sean did not do. And he came home a few years ago, and he took up his residence on the banks of the river Field behind the Canoe, and then he proceeded to write a whole series of ballads. Many of the ballads that are sung in Ireland today were made by Sean McCarthy. And people really sometimes don't know exactly what it is, but he's a marvelous ballad singer. He's on the television in America, New York. He retires and hibernates behind it in St. Louis until such time as the white trout and the salmon come up, and then he wreaks havoc on them, and then he goes to America, having been producing 3 or 4 songs. He's one of the best loved people we have. He's a brother of Mick McCarthy of the Embankment in Dublin. You know what I'm talking about? And he's another brother, Francis. They were very brilliant boys. They weren't born like the rest of us, like none of us were, I mean to say, with silver spoons in our mouth, but they made it the best of what God gave them and their talent for. Sean McCarthy.
Thank you.
Highland Paddy.
Thank you.
His own song.
I was born outside Listowel, half a couple of miles outside. I was born in the bog. We were the cleanest family in Kerry, 14 of us. And I'll tell you why we were clean, because if you went out the front door, you fell into a bog hole, and if you went out the back door, you fell into a bog hole. I'm going to sing a song that you might know it from several people put it on record. It's called Highland Paddy, and I need help with it.
All right.
I need help. So to finish off the evening, let's sing now and finish off a great day. I'm getting great offers here from the director, Michael Kennedy. One evening fair, as the sun was shining,